March 15th, 252 million years ago. The largest herbivores in Earth's history began systematically devouring entire forests, transforming lush green continents into barren wastelands that would remain empty for millions of years. These weren't just hungry animals. They were living bulldozers that accidentally triggered one of the most catastrophic ecological collapses our planet has ever witnessed. But what if I told you that this ancient environmental disaster holds the key to understanding whether our modern world is heading toward the exact same fate? The ground trembled under feet as wide as dinner tables. Every step crushed ferns that had grown taller than three-story buildings. The sound echoed across ancient forests like thunder that never stopped. This was March 15th, 252 million years ago. And the biggest plant-eating animals in Earth's history were about to change everything. Picture a creature longer than a school bus and heavier than 10 elephants. Its neck stretched up like a construction crane, reaching leaves 40 feet above the ground. When it opened its mouth, branches as thick as your arm snapped like twigs. This was Brontosaurus, and it wasn't alone. Hundreds of these giants moved through forests in herds so large they blocked out the sun. The smell of crushed plants filled the air everywhere they went. Sweet sap oozed from broken tree trunks. The earth turned into thick mud mixed with torn leaves and bark. Every footprint left a crater deep enough to hide a grown person. The forest floor disappeared under a carpet of destruction that stretched beyond what eyes could see. But something felt wrong in this prehistoric world. The trees that fell didn't grow back fast enough. Where green forests once stood tall and proud, bare dirt began to show through like bald spots on a head. The giants kept eating and eating, moving from one forest to the next like a slow-moving storm that devoured everything green. Young trees that should have been growing into mighty giants lay crushed and broken. Seeds that fell to the ground got trampled into the mud before they could sprout. The sound of falling trees became as common as bird songs once were. But now, even the birds were leaving. There was nowhere left for them to build their nests. The air itself began to change. Without enough trees to clean it, dust hung thick and heavy. The sky that once sparkled bright blue through green leaves now looked gray and empty. Rivers that used to run clear and cold turned brown with mud from all the torn-up ground. Other animals watched from hiding places that grew smaller every day. Small creatures that lived in tree holes had nowhere to go. Plant-eating animals that weren't giants found less and less food. Even the meat-eating dinosaurs began to worry. If all the plant-eaters starved, what would the meat-eaters hunt? The giants didn't know they were destroying their own world. They just followed their hunger from one forest to the next. Each day brought more destruction. Each night brought less green to the world. The earth was changing in ways that had never happened before. Something terrible was beginning. Something that would last for millions of years. The biggest disaster in Earth's history was starting with every single bite these gentle giants took. And once it began, there would be no way to stop it. The problem wasn't just big dinosaurs being hungry. The problem was math that spelled doom for every living thing on Earth. When one giant dinosaur ate for a single day, it stripped bare an area as big as a football field. But these creatures lived in herds of 50 or more. In just 1 week, a single herd could eat every plant across an area the size of a small town. The ancient world had turned into a giant eating contest that nobody could win. Imagine opening your refrigerator and finding it empty. Then imagine every store in your city with empty shelves too. Now imagine this happening across an entire continent. That's what Earth looked like, as the giants moved from forest to forest like hungry locusts made of flesh and bone. The worst part was how long it took trees to grow back. A mighty pine tree that reached toward the clouds had taken 300 years to get that tall. But a hungry brontosaurus could knock it down and eat it in less than 10 minutes. It was like watching someone burn down a library that took centuries to build, just to stay warm for a few hours. Scientists who study old rocks have found the proof buried in stone. They can see layers of earth that should be full of plant fossils, but contain almost nothing green. These empty layers stretch for thousands of miles and tell the story of continents stripped bare. The rock speaks of a world where forests disappeared faster than morning fog in sunlight. The air itself became poison without enough trees to clean it. Every breath the giants took put dirty air back into the sky. The earth grew hot as an oven because trees weren't there anymore to make cooling shade. Rain that should have soaked into forest soil ran off bare ground like water off a table, carrying away the dirt that new plants needed to grow. Other plant-eating dinosaurs faced a choice that meant life or death. The lucky ones lived near swamps where water plants still grew thick and green. But most weren't lucky. They had to watch their children grow thin and weak as food became harder and harder to find. Many smaller dinosaurs died not from being hunted, but from simple hunger. The meat-eating dinosaurs sensed the coming disaster like animals before an earthquake. They could smell death on the wind. They could see the fear in the eyes of their prey. Some began traveling hundreds of miles just to find animals fat enough to hunt. Others learned to eat things they had never eaten before, including plants, just to survive. This wasn't just about dinosaurs anymore. This was about whether life on Earth could continue at all when the biggest animals ate everything green faster than it could grow back. The dying began slowly, then all at once like dominoes falling in perfect rows. First came the sounds that stopped. No more rustling leaves in morning breezes. No more bird songs echoing through thick branches. No more buzzing insects dancing from flower to flower. The world grew quiet as a library at midnight. The giants themselves started to change. Their once shiny skin turned dull and gray. Their massive bodies grew thin as their ribs began to show through loose flesh. The herds that once moved like rolling thunder now stumbled across barren ground on legs that shook with every step. Some of the biggest creatures in Earth's history began to fall and never got back up. When the first giant dinosaur died from hunger, its body fed the land for months. But as more and more died, even the meat-eating animals couldn't eat them all fast enough. The smell of death hung thick in the air like smoke from a fire that wouldn't go out. Flies swarmed in black clouds so thick they blocked the sun. The smaller dinosaurs tried everything to survive. Some learned to dig deep holes, looking for roots that might still be alive underground. Others ate tree bark, even though it made them sick. A few discovered they could eat the insects that fed on dead giants, but there weren't enough bugs to feed everyone. Parents watched their babies grow weaker each day, knowing there was nothing they could do to save them. The earth itself began to die. Without plant roots to hold soil together, wind blew dirt into giant dust storms that turned day into night. When rain finally came, it washed away the top layer of ground that plants needed to grow. Rivers turned into muddy streams, then dried up completely. Even the rocks looked sad, covered in dust with no green anywhere to break up the endless brown and gray. But the strangest change came in how the survivors acted. Animals that used to fight each other now huddled together for comfort. Meat-eaters and plant-eaters drank from the same tiny water holes without fighting. Fear had replaced hunger as the strongest feeling in every living thing. They all seemed to understand that something bigger than any of them was destroying their world. The temperature kept rising as fewer and fewer trees remained to cool the air. The ground became so hot during the day that animals could only move at night. Even then, many burned their feet on rocks that stayed warm long after the sun went down. The world felt like the inside of an oven that someone forgot to turn off. By winter there was no winter. The seasons themselves seemed broken. Snow didn't fall. Leaves didn't change colors because there were no leaves left to change. Time itself felt different in a world where nothing grew and everything slowly died. The silence that followed lasted 10 million years. That's longer than humans have existed on Earth. Imagine your great-great-grandmother multiplied by 500,000 generations, and still the Earth stayed mostly empty and brown. The giants were gone. The forests were gone. Even the memory of green seemed erased from the world like chalk wiped from a blackboard. But deep underground, something amazing was happening. Seeds that had been buried in mud during the Great Dying waited in darkness like sleeping children. When the first tiny green shoot finally pushed through dead soil, it was smaller than your pinky finger. Yet it carried the hope of an entire planet ready to try growing again. Scientists today can read this ancient story written in rocks and fossils scattered across every continent. They've found the exact layers where life almost ended, marked by stone as gray as winter clouds. Above those dark layers, they've discovered the first signs of new life struggling back into existence. The earth kept a diary of its darkest time and its slow healing afterward. The lesson echoes through time like thunder rolling across mountains. When the biggest creatures ate everything green faster than it could grow back, they destroyed the very thing that kept them alive. Today, humans cut down forests at a rate that would make those ancient giants look slow. We pull fish from oceans faster than they can have babies. We use up soil and water and clean air like there's no tomorrow. But here's what the dinosaurs couldn't know that we can. We can choose to stop before it's too late. We can plant trees instead of cutting them down. We can eat less meat so fewer cows need giant fields to feed them. We can build machines that run on sunlight instead of oil buried deep in the ground. We have the power to learn from the past instead of repeating it. Walk outside right now and touch the bark of any tree. Feel how solid and real it is under your fingers. Listen to leaves rustling in the wind like whispers from long ago. Smell the sweet scent of grass after rain. All of this almost didn't exist because of what happened 252 million years ago. The ground beneath your feet has been both empty wasteland and green paradise. It remembers both. Every handful of dirt contains the remains of forests that died and forests that grew back. Every breath you take connects you to plants that survived the worst disaster in Earth's history. Those ancient giants walked on feet as wide as dinner tables, just like in our story's beginning. But now we know what their thundering footsteps truly meant. They were the drumbeat of destruction that nearly ended everything. The question that remains is simple and urgent. Will our footsteps write a different ending to the story?